Anand Hari Prabhu and Bhakti Center for having me. Thank you, Adi Purush Prabhu, for beautiful Guru Puja, setting the tone for us and Radha Madhava prayers. Um, so happy to be here with all of you on this Saturday morning. And let's dive right in to Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, so we're reading from Canto 10, chapter 10, and verse 13 from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so again, 10, 10, 13, Srimad Bhagavatam. And the Sanskrit. Asata Shri Mandandyasya Daridyam Param Anjanam Atma Pipena Bhutani Daridra Param Ikshate. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Atheistic fools and rascals who are very much proud of wealth fail to see things as they are. Therefore, returning them to poverty is a proper ointment for their eyes, so that they may see things as they are. At least a poverty-stricken man can realize how painful poverty is, and therefore he will not want others to be in a painful condition like his own. Okay, so read that one more time. Atheistic fools and rascals who are very much proud of their wealth fail to see things as they are. Therefore, returning them to poverty is the proper ointment for their eyes, so they may see things as they are. At least a poverty-stricken man can realize how painful poverty is, and therefore he will not want others to be in a painful condition like his own. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Even today, if a man who was formerly poverty-stricken gets money, he's inclined to utilize his money to perform many philanthropic activities, like opening schools for uneducated men and hospitals for the diseased. In this connection, there's an instructive story called Punar Mushiko Bhava, again become a mouse. A mouse was very much harassed by a cat, and therefore the mouse approached a saintly person to request to become a cat. When the mouse became a cat, he was harassed by a dog. And then when he became a dog, he was harassed by a tiger. When he became a tiger, he stared at the saintly person, and when the saintly person asked him, "What do you want?" the tiger said, "I want to eat you." Then the saintly person cursed him, saying, "May you again become a mouse." A similar thing is going on all over the universe. One is going up and down, sometimes becoming a mouse, sometimes a tiger, and so on. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "Brahmanda Brahmite Kone Bhagyavan Jeev, Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Lata Beach." CC Madhya 19.151. The living entities are promoted and degraded by the laws of nature. But if one is very, very fortunate by association with saintly persons, he gets the seed of devotional service, and his life becomes successful. Narad Muni wanted to bring Nalakuvara and Manigriva to the platform of devotional service through poverty, and thus he cursed them. Such is the mercy of a Vaishnava. Unless one is brought to the Vaishnava platform, one cannot be a good man. Harav abhaktyasya kuto mada guna. Bhagavatam 5:18-12. And a Vaishnava never becomes a good man. However, severely he is punished. Okay. Om Agyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshuru Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Deshtarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Vanchakalpa Trubhyasya Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnav Evyo Namo Namaha. Okay, wanted to just start off by taking blessings from everyone, all the devotees here, to be able to share in Srimad Bhagavatam as a speaker, I was reflecting on this before the talk, that we can prep, we can go deeper in the Bhagavatam and the text, apply our own life into what's going on, and apply what's going on into the text in our life. But it's so nice as a speaker, usually when you're speaking on a topic, you're the presenter, you're the main object of the talk. But when we're speaking on Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavatam is actually the main presenter, and we're actually just serving. So it's a very nice position to be in, very safe position to be in, as a conduit, and with all of you here today to talk about our realizations. And for those of you who've seen me on here before, I'd like to keep it interactive. So please jump into the chat, and we'll open it up for questions as well. That's personally, I feel like this should not be a lecture so much, so it should be an experience that we're creating and that we're learning from, we're all growing from together. So that's my style and mood. So appreciate that. This pastime that we're speaking on and reading, this chapter, is on the story of Nalakuvara and Manigriva. And I won't go into all the details of the pastime because we're still going through the chapter. But in a nutshell, we see so far that Nalakuvara and Manigriva were two celestials, and they were devotees of Lord Shiva, and they were proud of their opulence, of what they achieved in life. And so much so that they were sporting in the lake with these young women, and Narad Muni had come by, and they were naked. And when they even saw Vaishnava or Sadhu, they were so much engrossed in what was going on for them, their enjoyment, that they weren't even able to cover up. And so Narad Muni is cursing them. He becomes angry, and he curses them that now you will take birth as two trees, the Yamala Arjuna trees, and this is the story of the deliverance of those trees. And therefore you will, and this verse is talking about, therefore you will know what poverty is like, so you can again become humble, essentially. And then Krishna, of course, we know, liberates them when he has the Damodar pastime, and he actually is able to liberate them and then give them devotional service. And as I was thinking about this pastime, I was thinking of 5 principles that I wanted to share of spiritual life from this pastime. 5 principles that came to my mind of spiritual life. And I'll go through them fairly quickly because we want to also open it up for questions. But the first principle, straight from this translation of this verse, is to allow our suffering to give way to bhakti and compassion. One of the things that's coming up in this verse immediately is that Narad Muni is mentioning, he's speaking here, that people who are very proud of who they are, their achievements, their wealth, their fortune, their talents, they fail to see things as they are. So therefore, returning them to poverty is a proper ointment for their eyes, so they may see things as they are. At least a poverty-stricken man can realize how painful poverty is, and he will not want others to be in a painful condition like his own. And so this example of a poverty-stricken man is given in the purport by Srila Prabhupada, that when even someone who is poverty-stricken formerly and who is given money, they generally use that money for a good cause. He mentions this. Why? Because they felt the pain and the suffering of that condition of life. Life is inherently very fragile. It's very vulnerable. But sometimes we get lulled into this false sense of security that we're the doer, that we're the achiever, that we're the one who is pulling all the strings. But a poverty-stricken man has that in their consciousness. So I was thinking that this first principle, that we all have, whether we're poverty-stricken or not, depending on material standards, spiritually we're all suffering, actually. And in part of the human condition, we're all suffering, and we're all in pain in one way or another. And so we can allow our suffering that we're feeling to give way to compassion to others, and to bhakti, and to our own bhakti, actually, our connection to Krishna. And I was remembering this quote that when I actually first read that translation, the quote that came to my mind, I don't know if anyone here has heard this quote, but I've heard it many times, and I just Googled it beforehand. But it was that, and I really liked this quote, it's, "May I never forget on my best day that I needed God just as desperately as I did on my worst day. There's a nice quote from, it's used, shared in different traditions, but actually it's harder to remember Krishna when things are going well. When everything is going chaotic and everything is going down to the gutters, it's actually it's easier to at least remember Krishna. Sometimes it's very easy to remember Krishna if we've practiced that. But when things are going well, it's harder. So in this case, we can allow our suffering to give us remembrance of what is important in life. And as we can see, these brothers, they forgot this. They were so conditioned by their enjoyment and fixated on that they became unconscious. They became insensitive to their own suffering, to their own spiritual life, their own devotional service. That they were insensitive to Narad Muni when he came. And in this same vein of suffering, it's said that a Vaishnava is para dukkha dukhi, meaning that they feel for the sufferings of others, and they want to alleviate that through dint of their own suffering. And this leads way to empathy and compassion, because ultimately, I was just thinking that ultimately bhakti is an internal experience. It's not something that we externally are doing. Yes, externally we are achieving different things in this world. We're serving in different ways. But at the same time, what are the things that are going on internally within us? Those are important to cultivate, which is purifying our intention to serve, our service mood, creating our heart space, cultivating our heart space, and then also cultivating our good qualities that are necessary on the path of bhakti. So all of this is part of the internal work, and sometimes we can get so lost in the external. And we can see these twins, they were great devotees of Lord Shiva, and they were advanced spiritualists at some point, but then they got lost on that way, and became externally focused versus internally focused. So that's the first principle, and so that is allowing our suffering to give way to bhakti and our compassion for others. The second principle that I wanted to share at a brief was that seeing Krishna's grace in all situations is so important. We can see that this curse was given to these boys, these twins, Nalakuvara and Manigriva. And sometimes when we first see the curse, and I'm sure when they first heard the curse, they were thinking, how terrible of a situation is this, right? Being cursed to be trees for years and years and years, and angering a great sage like Narad Muni. But sometimes the worst situations can become the best situations for us, and sometimes the best situations can become the worst. So it's really important that we don't judge the situation up front. We don't judge the situation up front. How many times in our life we can think about it where we've had something happen and we're thinking, this is the worst thing ever for me right now. I don't know how I'm going to get through this, what this means for me. It seems like everything is going wrong in my life. And we've all probably had this experience many times actually in our life. But then we can see that in that situation, there's a deep gift that's given. It may not be apparent at first, but then we slowly come to find this out. And it's said that in every situation, there's a gift, and it's like mining for a gem, right? So when you're mining for a gem in the earth, we're seeing a lot of soil up front first when we're mining for that gem. We're seeing a lot of earth. And we might see not that much return. We might be saying we're just seeing soil. We're not seeing the one piece of gem. But the more we go deeper and deeper, we'll actually find that gem. And it takes conscious effort to find that. It takes time. But that is really, really key when we can build that mindset to see, even in the curse, we can see the gift that's given. It takes hard work, but it's very important. So wanted to share that point as well. We can learn from Manigriva and Nalakuvara that just because something's going on in our life that's very tough doesn't mean that we have to judge that up front. It might be something that's very valuable for our spiritual growth. And the lens that we want to look through as much as possible, it can be tough sometimes, but the standard, yes, it takes trust in Krishna. Andrea, thank you for mentioning that. And that's actually the core quality. But the lens we want to look toward is really accepting what's favorable for our bhakti and rejecting what isn't favorable. So, for example, a situation might seem very challenging, but if we can use it to enhance our devotion, our spiritual life, it becomes favorable, actually, to our devotion. So we can see Krishna's grace in all situations. And with these brothers, they actually were given this very torturous curse that can seem like upfront. But Narad Muni actually wanted to help them. He wanted to help them. I was actually listening to Ganesham Prabhu's class yesterday, wonderful class. But he mentions that it's not that Narad Muni wanted something from them, or that he was just angry and had a bad day and wanted to just curse them. But he actually saw that in this curse, I can help them grow spiritually and bring them back to their original consciousness. So that's also the job of a Vaishnava. Sometimes they have to cut through the layers by being heavy sometimes, but it's in the mood of service, not in the mood of I'm the boss. It's in the mood of I want to help you. So those are the first two principles. And the third principle that I wanted to mention from this pastime is that Krishna is the center of the universe, not us. We can see at Nalakuvara, Manigriva, they completely forgot this, right? So they're thinking they're the center, their enjoyment is the center, so much that they forgot Narad Muni was even around. And Krishna actually wants us to get the credit. I was thinking about this, that in this world, when we act, Krishna actually wants us to be put forward. And I was thinking of Arjuna, actually, and the story of Arjuna. It's one of my favorite stories when Krishna leaves this planet in the Mahabharata, and Arjuna goes to Dwarka. And obviously this is after the battle of Kurukshetra, where the Pandavas win, the battle as we know. And Arjuna is obviously the MVP of the warriors from the Pandava side, if you will. Krishna is the chariot driver who's actually supporting him and really guiding him through every situation. And really it's Krishna. But when Arjuna goes, and it's very interesting, but he goes to Dwarka and he brings back the Yadu ladies from Dwarka he wants to bring them back to Hastinapur because Krishna has left the planet. And so there's no protection for them. And Arjuna is the best archer, warrior in the world at that time, right? And he had just finished, many years back, the Kurukshetra war had just happened. And he goes, and it's very interesting, he's coming back with the Yadu ladies, and he stops just to take rest or whatnot, and they're attacked by these tribal people who want to take the ladies away. So they're bandits, and they're attacking. And Arjuna immediately gets his bow out, his Gandiva bow. And he tries to pick it up, and he can hardly string the bow. He can hardly string it. And it's said in the Mahabharata. And then when he fires his arrows at these tribal individuals who are trying to steal the ladies of Dwarka, and Arjuna feels a sense of protection, because these are Krishna's family. He sees that when he's firing these arrows, the arrows are actually not even reaching their targets. And he's feeling fatigued already. He hasn't even started this battle with them. And he's feeling fatigued. And he's actually not able to protect the ladies. Many of them are taken away. And when he goes to Yudhishthira, he's so crestfallen. And King Yudhishthira's asking Arjuna, what happened? I mean, you're always victorious in battle. Why do you look so crestfallen? And Arjuna mentions something very beautiful. He mentions that he comes back to Hastinapur after this incident. And he mentions that actually I was wrong this whole time. And he says that I'm realizing that when Krishna left this planet, that actually Krishna was doing everything for us. He was doing everything for us. And he was the source of my strength. And actually, once he left the planet, I didn't have my strength anymore. I could barely even string my Gandiva bow. And then Arjuna goes on to, and it's one of my favorite stories. He goes on to recall how with Krishna he would sit, he would loiter with Krishna, he would joke with Krishna, he used to sleep with Krishna, and sometimes he would even joke as friends where he would tease Krishna. And he was thinking that sometimes I would tease him, I would put Krishna down. And sometimes you tease someone and you put them down, you kind of put them in their place, you make some joke at their expense. And he was thinking that Krishna was God, and he was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but he would kindly tolerate my jokes, actually. And so Arjuna was humbled in that moment, because it's easier when we are having success to think that we're the one that's doing everything, that we're pulling the strings, that it's actually us that's getting through, but it's actually Krishna. Krishna is using us as an instrument. And yes, we have our own talents and gifts, of course, but it's actually through the mercy of Krishna. And we can see this example of Arjuna, who in the Mahabharata, he's destroying the greatest of warriors and the greatest of armies with ease, practically. But then he's not able to deal with some tribal individuals who are trying to steal the other ladies, of course. So this is all obviously a pastime of Krishna, but and of the Pandavas. We can see that Krishna is in the center of the universe. And when we move away from this, then we also need to be humbled sometimes, because Krishna wants us to get the credit, right? From the Mahabharata, the work, Arjuna gets all the credit for, and the Pandavas, Yudhishthira, Bhima, all of them get all the credit for what's going on. Ultimately, it was Krishna. Krishna wants the devotee to get the credit. But if we start to not see things as they are, as the verse says, where we think that it was us that was doing it, and we start to forget who actually is doing it, then ultimately we need to be humbled. Just like these boys, Nalakuvara and Manigriva, were humbled by Narad Muni. It's the same lesson that needs to be learned. So that's the third principle that I want to mention, that Krishna is in the center, and that we should be grateful to him and to his devotees as much as possible. And also, this is not just for us as thinking of Krishna, but also, practically speaking, in our life, also being grateful to those that have invested within us as well. So we can be grateful to Krishna for providing us everything, but also at a practical level in our life, this also means being grateful and seeing who has helped us get to where we are in our life. Maybe it's our parents, maybe it's our family, maybe it's our loved ones, our friends, the devotees, different people that are invested in us, our gurus, our mentors. Always being grateful for that, because again, that will keep us centered. So it's not just it's Krishna, but through the mercy of also who's around us, we can actually see Krishna's grace, and always being grateful for that. So those are the first three principles, and then the fourth principle. Here, I'm just going right into it in the interest of time. The fourth principle is that our character is tested more when we have everything than when we don't. That you're tested more. It's easy to be humble when we're put when we are put into a distressing situation. It's very easy to be humble because we don't have anything to actually show for. And Srila Prabhupada said this. He said that one's greatness has to be estimated by one's ability to tolerate provoking situations. Because and when he says this, it's not just provoking situations from a negative perspective. Someone insulting us, someone criticizing us. That's maybe the common thing that we can think of, provoking situations, maybe a challenging situation in our life. But also, we need to be able to tolerate the positive situations as well. The praise sometimes that we get for the good things that we're doing. Being able to be humble in those veins is actually harder than failure. And I was thinking that actually it's harder to maintain success, if you think about it, than failure. It's harder to maintain success. Because often, going back to this earlier point with Arjuna, whenever we succeed, we often start to become proud of our skills, of our abilities, of our talents. And then we start to think that it was actually just us. We forget the people that are invested within us, in us. We forget sometimes even Krishna. We forget all the positives that were given, all the people that helped us along the way, but we think it's us that's part of it. And you can see this in the example of these brothers as well, that they became attached to the fact that of their opulence and that they were in charge, that they were in control. So the real test of humility is that when we have everything or we have something, how will we act? How will we still maintain a kind and humble attitude? And sometimes we can, and I want to make this point, that Sometimes we can see someone, maybe it's even in our community, and we don't like their behavior. And we might say, if I was in that position, I would act very differently. I would be, if I was temple president, I would behave differently, right? Or if I was the chairman of this or that leader, I do this differently. And of course, we can do things differently. There's no flaw in that. But it's harder when we're actually in that position to actually do the right thing, because so often we get in that position, if we're having that mindset, we actually find ourselves doing the very things that we don't want and that we don't like, actually. So again, maintaining success, and success from a devotional perspective is maintaining our internal world of humility, of tolerance, of compassion, of humility, of empathy, all those qualities, and our purifying our intention. All of that is the key part of our internal world. So if we're not maintaining that, then we can go awry in any situation. And so I was just thinking that it's actually more impressive to me when someone's been around for many years, and they can speak positively and deeply and with humility about those around them, of where they're serving, of the community that they're around, versus even someone who's new. Because when we're new, everything seems beautiful, right? I'm sure we all imagined, and we all had this experience where if we're new devotees coming into the community, everything is amazing, right? When we go around, the devotees are amazing, the prasad is amazing, kirtan's amazing, and first couple months it's amazing, 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 and then sometimes maybe a couple months in, a year or two in, we start to see faults with everyone, or different people, start to see inklings of faults and flaws, and realize that everyone's human. And then that can transform into having this critical mindset, right? Of thinking that I'm better than someone else because of their flaws, their imperfections. Because inevitably everyone has flaws and imperfections, right? So I'm actually more impressed when I see those in our community that can maintain that attitude of humility and gratitude toward others who have been around for so many years, who have every reason potentially to feel negative and cynical, versus even just someone who's coming in new, that's obviously there, because that's very difficult to do. It's very difficult to maintain that mindset, to look again for those gems versus the soil, the earth that we see. Because that earth, when we're looking for that gem, there's more earth than there's gem. There might be one hidden gem, but 95% is earth. And so we can get lost in that detail and then forget about that gem that we see, whether it's in another person, whether it's in our community, whether it's in our practice, whatever the case might be. So that's the fourth principle, that our character is tested more when we have something, or when we have everything, more than when we don't actually have things. Because when we don't, then there's nothing to show for. So naturally, we are feeling more humble generally and more vulnerable. And one thing I want to clarify in this verse is that obviously it's mentioned that Narada Muni has mentioned that one should be poverty stricken to see things as they are. But to be clear, I was thinking that it's not that wealth is an issue, actually, or that having any sort of material opulence is an issue, whether it's fame, prestige, wealth. All these things can actually help us serve deeply. They can be things that we use to serve Krishna, actually, because we can't give what we don't have. So if we have a certain level of influence or money, we can give in that way, at that level, and we can do bigger and better things, actually. And it's not a prerequisite, obviously. Those that have nothing or those that have much, a lot, all can serve. But it's not an issue of money or opulence that Narada Muni is saying here. It's the mindset behind it. It's the mindset. Because money is very helpful, and it's actually necessary in this world to survive and to thrive. But it's actually when we let this change who we are fundamentally, our opulence, our achievements, our talent, our money, our fame, we let it change who we are at the core. That's the issue that we're talking about here, where we become misaligned with our true nature, with who we actually are, with the soul, and we become fixated on our ego. So I've heard this said that money is an amplifier. It just shows more of who you already are, right? So we can see in this pastime, it's showing more of who Nalakuvara Manigriva had become in this situation. And then lastly, the last principle that I wanted to mention is that devotional service is what fulfills the heart. In this pastime, we can see the brothers are focused solely on their enjoyment. And it might seem externally that they're very happy, but are they really happy? Are they actually happy? Sometimes we substitute enjoyment for happiness, for real joy. And actually, it's devotional service that fulfills the heart. We see later in this chapter, I won't go there yet because we're not at those verses, but when the brothers actually see Krishna when they're delivered from as Arjuna trees, they actually realize that actually your glories, serving you, serving Narad Muni, is actually the essence of life. Because they realize that what they were doing before wasn't actually satisfying to the heart. There's something much deeper than that. And we see many examples, whether it's even in the secular world or in a devotional world, of this. But for example, one example that I've spoken on before is Srila Vyasadeva. He spoke on, when he wrote the Vedas, and spent so much time compiling Karmakanda and the many different aspects of Vedas. Huge literature, actually. And he wasn't fulfilled. He's actually quite depressed. And Narad Muni, once again, actually came to the rescue. Narad Muni is always coming to the rescue, actually, it seems like. And he asked Narad Muni, what's going on? Why am I not feeling fulfilled? And actually it was revealed that you haven't glorified Krishna from your heart. You haven't spoken from your heart. You haven't connected from your heart. And that's where actually the Srimad Bhagavatam, which we're all reading, was written as the Amal Puran, because it is really talking about devotion at its core. And we also see examples in the secular world as well. I was just thinking of, I think it was John Rockefeller, who was one of the wealthiest men in the world, individuals in the world. And even by today's standards, if you apply his wealth, I mean, he's actually blows out many of the big billionaires. And I was reading in his life story just briefly, but he was kind of a ruthless, maybe not kind of, but he was a ruthless he was a ruthless businessman for much of his years, and actually came to a point in I think his 40s or 50s where his health went totally down the drain, and he was losing his hair and skin issues and so many different things. And went through depression, and he's actually, I think there was a very clear period where he started to realize that he wanted to give back, that he had accumulated so much by being so ruthless in his life and built this immense amount of wealth, but that actually true fulfillment for him, for his own sanity and his own fulfillment, but to society, was to also give back to others. Because we're all looking for pleasure, we're all looking for that, but how do we get that is the difference. And so then he started to do a lot of his philanthropic activities and became one of the biggest philanthropists of all time, even from a secular perspective, actually as well. So we can see that's really service to others that fills us up when we're coming from that mindset. So, and because we ultimately want to be loved and to love, so giving our heart is the only way to actually do that. I wanted to end off with that. Those are 5 principles from this pastime to be in accordance with Anand Prabhu's request to be finished by a certain time, 7:50, close to on the dot, I guess here. But the 5 principles were allowing our suffering to give way to our bhakti, to our compassion for others. Talked about a Vaishnava Paradukha Dukhi, and how when we're in that state, we can actually be compassionate toward others by dint of our own experience, our own pain, our own suffering in our life. We don't want others to suffer. And so we want to help as much as we can. The second principle, we can see Krishna's grace in all situations. We don't want to judge a situation up front, but we want to see Krishna's grace in it. Again, initially it can seem very difficult, but when we can see the gem in all of the earth that we're digging, it can be very fulfilling, and we can see the meaning, the fulfillment in the challenges. And then also the third principle is that Krishna is the center of the universe. We talked about the story of Arjuna and saving the the ladies of the Yadu dynasty, and failing to do so, very crushing to his pride, and seeing that Krishna actually was supporting him was actually the foundation of his strength all along, and him realizing that fully, even though he had heard the whole Bhagavad Gita at that point. The fourth principle, our character being tested when we have something or if we have everything, more than when we don't have anything, actually. It's harder to maintain success than even failure, because with success comes a whole host of ego issues like pride, false pride particularly, and arrogance. And then devotional, and the fifth principle being devotional service is what fulfills the heart. So those are 5 principles that I wanted to share. And I'll open it up for any thoughts, any realizations, any comments or questions. Would love to share with all of you.
Great class, Prabhu. Great class as always. Audience, so we're supposed to give priority to the temple room. We see Ross. Ross, do you have a comment or questions? No? Okay, we're comfortable with that, no problem. Domi, Hare Krishna. Domi, Arjuna Prabhu in the back, Hare Krishna. All right, if not, if there's no...
My respects to you, thank you.
Adipusha Prabhu, you burning to say something? If not, we'll...
Not burning, but I'm praying to Krishna what to say. We hear about Narada Muni approaching some intoxicated people. And Krishna appears in many different ways. When he comes as Ram, he slaughters Ravana. When he comes as Narada Muni, he curses the indulgent kids and to become trees, and then eventually brings them to devotional service. Prabhu was explaining how devotional service is actually a solution. And we see how Srila Prabhupada came to all of us who were just, drowning in intoxication, and how, in my own experience, after having some years of cultivation of Krishna consciousness, Krishna arranged that the Sankirtan devotees brought me out by the hand. And I don't know if you can understand this, but in this country, we have football games, baseball games, concerts. And so we would go to these places, and you go from one vehicle to the other in the parking, and every single person is, taking intoxication, slaughtering animals, burning dead bodies. And it's almost like Narada Muni. You're walking up to them, and they are completely blown away. And then because it's your service, you're for our own purification, and Krishna's given us something to do to help us to become devotees. We offer them an opportunity for devotional service. And the dynamic is just unbelievable. It's like Mahajana Yena Katasi. We're supposed to follow in the footsteps of people like Narada and approach these people. And then the miracle of devotional service occurs. We see you walking through the streets there, which is the main observation that we have.
Should I start approaching people? Should I go to the parking lot?
Well, if we desire to follow the footsteps of Narada Muni, Krishna will arrange for us to go out. We're meant to go out. And just like you can hear about Lord Nityananda and Haridas going to Jagai and Madai, and Jagai and Madai were devotional service. There were rapists, there was thieves, there were all kinds of wild activities, sinful. But then Lord Nityananda was about to kill them. Or Lord Chaitanya was about to kill them because they injured Lord Nityananda. But Lord Nityananda said, no, you'd have to kill everybody because they're all like this. They're all like these sons of Kuvera. But instead of cursing them, we're there to bless them. I'm trying to bring you into picturing this experience, going from person to person to person to person to person to intoxicated person one after another. It's a little distracting as you're walking around because you're the main picture there with the trees flying by, and we almost wish we could just stop for a minute and listen, because this is real. Krishna consciousness is not something in a book or it's something that happened a long time ago. we're meant to be devotees, to experience what it's like to step into the role that Narada was showing here, and actually to let Krishna work through us. Krishna's love help us to reach out to people and share devotional service with them. And we've seen, I spent decades on the road going around, spent 13 years at least in this country, as well as the country, just going to these events and watching how Krishna can work through us to give people devotional service. The Bhakti Center came from, many people giving donations. 350,000 people I was spoke to in order to get this building. Many other people went out too. I mean, I'm just the ragtag lowest level among different Maharatis who went out and did that. But this is our movement. We're meant to be Narada Muni-like, follow in his footsteps. And we have a wonderful gift. And we can't just have it ourselves and really get it. We have to give it to get it. Maybe I'm talking too much. Maybe somebody else and somebody to share. I would love to take people by the hand to these events and show them, watch this. When we approach people and say, guess what? Devotional service. And they look at devotional service, and then the wonderful exchanges that happen. I'll stop talking. It's too much to funnel down into the few minutes available. Maybe somebody else has some comments.
Thank you, Adipusha Prabhu. I saw Shikshashtakam Prabhu had his hand raised.
Hare Krishna.
I'm going to jump in real quick just to.
Thank you, Adi. This is just a brief thing. I like the reminder of you saying about Krishna being in the center. I just got some more realization. I had the first realization of that walking around the farm community that I was part of in the late 70s. And I realized, looking at the opposite side of the mirror, thinking that I was in charge of my life, I was the center of the universe, and actually realizing that Krishna is the center of the universe. It took me 45 years to actually, I mean, I'm still learning, but, I'm understanding. I read Prabhupada's books and I'm thinking, this is what Krishna wants me to do. As you surrender to me, I reward you accordingly. So as we surrender, Krishna is giving us empowerment, and surrender means serving Krishna means doing exactly what he wants to do, us to do, no more, no less. That's what it means to surrender. And as long as we do that, we'll be empowered more and more to do Krishna's bidding. And of course, he wants us to take the credit, but we want to give him all the credit. We don't want any credit. So that's all I had to say. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Wonderful realizations. And one thing that was coming to my mind as you were sharing is that often we these principles, we know them. Being, for example, you mentioned Krishna being in the center of the universe, but continually hearing them is so important for all of us to apply them in our life. Like you mentioned, you've been applying them for 45 years. And I'm thinking of myself and even my own journey, but at different levels in our life, we start to realize things that are different on deeper level based off these simple principles. So it's not that, I think Shobra mentioned that Krishna consciousness is simple, but it's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. We have to continually apply this. So I love your point there. Thank you.
Dear devotees, Shishirada Mulidhar Shigor Chandra is here. Hare Krishna.
There you go. Awesome, and thank you so much, everyone in the chat, by the way. Just wanted to appreciate everyone's comments and their thoughts. And Jamuna Jai, I appreciate what you mentioned. A pauper is proud of his penny. Poverty does not equal piety. I love that. I mentioned this point that when we don't have much, not so proud, we can be. Okay. Should we end class, Prabhu? I'm a little confused.
I have a question, Anuj Prabhu. Do you have a minute?
Yes, please.
Yeah, yeah. You were talking about humility, and I was thinking when I have nothing, and I'm humble, or when I'm experiencing a beat down and I'm humble, is that real humility, or it's just a beat down and I have no other choice? How sincere is that humility that is not motivated by, but that is coming from having nothing or going through a difficult period of time?
Yeah, that's a great question, Prabhu, and I always appreciate your questions, always taking us a level deeper. So I really appreciate that. My answer would be that there's external and internal, both as mentioned in our talk. And so an external circumstance can also help us force us to create an internal state. So, for example, in this case, you're mentioning being humble. So, let's say having nothing, we can feel humble. The problem is that if we're too reliant on just external circumstances, now that can create an effect internally where if we can hang on to that experience and internalize that experience in a healthy way of knowing that we're dependent on Krishna, that we're dependent on grace, that we're not the doer of everything, the controller of everything. If we can hang on to that lesson, then it's a good situation, actually, and meaning that we can learn from it. And let's say when we have very much given to us, like Shipra mentions, that someone who's pious, who is given, who was formerly in poverty, for example, they'll be trying to do, when they're given money, they'll be trying to do something for the welfare of society, right? Because they're remembering their suffering. They don't want others to suffer like that. Now, if someone isn't able to remember that though, so let's say they have an external situation internally, and yes, they go through that, but they're unable to hang on to that sense of that pain that they went through, then there's every chance that when they're given more, that they can revert back to some of those prideful, more arrogant thoughts. But it's not one way or another. It actually really depends on our internal world, our state of mind, who we're associating with, or what we're really putting into our mind and our consciousness, because that will end up determining where we end up going with that. I feel like, as we, again, going back to this point around success and failure from an external sense, as we're succeeding, or as we're achieving, or as we're serving, whatever the case might be in this world, it's so important that we're constantly like gardening that garden, right? Like plucking out those weeds of some of that arrogance, of some of that false pride that can show up, because there's every chance for that to show up especially when we're doing well, right? Because even going back to the example of Arjuna, it's easy it's easier to be humble when we don't have anything, because externally we have nothing to show for. But externally, when we have something to show for, internally it can also change things as well, right? So, hope that answers your question. But essentially, there's the external world, which is our achievements and what we're showing to everyone, and our mindset that we're showing. But then there's our internal world, that actually that's where things are going on. External can affect internal, but internal can also affect external. But the key is to make our internal world independent of the external world that's happening. That's actually the key in our spiritual life.
Nice, very nicely put, Prabhu.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's Saturday. We can take one more comment or question. It's just a handful of us left. Rich, nice seeing you. Freshly shaved, devotional face. Yeah. Rich is a runner. He's running for Krishna. He's running from Maya for Krishna.
Wonderful.
All right.
To see you running. Thank you, Will. Thank you, Suzanne, Yogeshwari, Hemalata, and Pink Yogi of Harlem. Thank you.
Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Rich B. Good seeing you, Prabhu. Good seeing you, dude. So when we are in the association of the devotees, then we can stand the test of success, right, Anuj Prabhu? We can stand.
Yeah, definitely, especially the right sangha. That's so important. I also wanted to mention this point. The curtain had opened, so we weren't able to talk about it. But Jumana Jaya made a nice point that even if we don't have anything, we can still become proud. It's not that
Yeah,
just because we don't have any. She mentioned a
that's
pauper
me.
proud of his penny. Poverty does not equal piety. But even in those circumstances, we can see, right? It's like kind of like I was just thinking of, for example, like a dog. Like a dog can become very attached to its bone, or like you give it a toy, and it thinks that, obviously everything that's it's been given, food, water, toys, is been given by the owner, right, or the master or whatnot. But then it starts to think that it's theirs, right? It thinks that this is my toy, this is my object, etc. And so we can, even if we don't have very much, it might just be one thing. That mindset again can creep in. So, and internal is more important than external, whether we have a lot or we have nothing. But of course, when we have a lot, it's a little bit easier still to get into that mindset of that I'm the one that's providing all this, because we have more to show for. So naturally, the brain is thinking objectively that, okay, we've done this and we've created this.
We can even become attached to the mode of goodness. Say nothing of material possessions and status and fame. Even the mode of goodness is something that we can become attached to. So, there's, I guess we have to be careful on all fronts, right? Both external, internal, and even be wary of being proud of your piety or even just your showing thereof.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Rich. Yeah, that's true. We can easily, it's in all situations, we can easily become proud. So we can be proud of being humble. I'm the most humble person. I'm the most humble person. I'm so humble. Are we really though?
Nice. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. So nice to spend time with all of you. Haribol, thank you, Bhakti Center, also for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very nice session. Therapeutical class. Thank you.
Haribol.
Yeah, let's not become attached to organic yogurt, mode of goodness, piety. Let's transcend. Let's go deeper. Internal is more important than external, right? Anuj? Yeah. Okay. Hare Krishna, Hare Rama. Love you all. Haribol.